On Valentine's Day 2000, Sierra and Valve announced that Half-Life would be ported to the Sega Dreamcast, with the project helmed by Gearbox and Captivation Digital Laboratories. While CDL was responsible for integrating the Dreamcast technology, Gearbox would create additional content that would be exclusive to the port, including a multiplayer mode that would support online play through SegaNet and a new single-player campaign named Half-Life Guard Duty. The port was delayed several times until it was cancelled just weeks before its projected shipping date, and Gearbox shifted their attention to porting the game to the PlayStation 2. Since then, 2 different builds of the Dreamcast version were leaked online, both of which were finished just months before the game was cancelled. Sierra cited changing market conditions as the reason for the cancellation, which is basically a fancy way to say that the Dreamcast had been discontinued by that point and the world was moving on to the next generation of consoles. However, Gearbox would later make a PC version of the new campaign, now titled Half-Life Blue Shift, which was released on June 15, 2001 as a standalone game. In addition to new maps and a new story, Blue Shift included a high-definition model pack carried over from the Dreamcast port that upgraded the original graphics, which, even just 3 years after Half-Life's release, were already seen as dated. Even with the new graphics, is Blue Shift worth your time? Probably not, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's talk about the game. Half-Life Blue Shift begins once again on the morning of the Resonance Cascade, with Black Mesa security guard Barney Calhoun on his way to work. Barney was the name of the security guard model in the original Half-Life and has since become a catch-all term for every guard in the Black Mesa facility, though Barney Calhoun is his own character merely based on the Black Mesa security team. You might be more familiar with Barney from his role in Half-Life 2, but in this game he's merely a security guard trying to make it through his shift. His blue shift. Barney is tasked with repairing an elevator, but as he gets it running, that pesky resonance cascade occurs, causing the elevator to crash and knocking Barney unconscious. When he wakes up, the Black Mesa complex is in ruins for the 3rd time, and Barney scrambles to find his way out. He encounters a dying scientist who tells him to find Dr. Rosenberg, who's working on a way to escape the facility, though Barney needs to rescue him from the HECU first. Rosenberg leads Barney to an abandoned teleporter which he hopes to get running again. But in order to do so, Barney needs to travel to Xen to activate a relay point so the scientist can calibrate the machine, and then charge the teleporter's fuel cells once he returns. After fighting the last wave of HECU soldiers, Barney, Rosenberg, and their scientist friends teleport out of the building, and, well, that's the end. Blue Shift's narrative is certainly the weakest in the series so far, especially if you've recently played through Half-Life and Opposing Force like me. While those games had interesting set pieces that progress the story, Blue Shift puts way too much emphasis on dialogue, and also retreads plenty of familiar ground. There's no reason for Blue Shift to have its own tram ride and pre-disaster section, because Half-Life already did that and did it better. There's only a few scripted events that aren't just characters spouting lines at each other or directly telling the player what they need to do next. And the dialogue is rarely ever entertaining, consisting mostly of exposition or stock phrases, especially when it comes to Dr. Rosenberg. It's nice that Rosenberg is an actual character and not just another scientist or security guard. But 90% of the time, he's just rambling on about science stuff, most of which is technobabble that means nothing if you aren't already familiar with the Half-Life series. Even if you're a die-hard Half-Life fan like I am, you'll get tired of this story before long. In that regard, it's a relief that the game only takes 2 to 3 hours to finish because the story is so uninspired that you'll want it to be over quickly. That length might also be a blessing from a gameplay perspective because Blue Shift doesn't contain any gameplay additions whatsoever. No new weapons, no new enemies, and no new gameplay mechanics. Not even any of the stuff introduced in Opposing Force makes a return. That's probably due to Blue Shift's original status as a supplementary campaign to Half-Life's Dreamcast port, but as a full-fledged expansion pack, it's lacking. And even when the game does try something different, it doesn't work very well. Part of the Xen chapter features a maze that's difficult, not to mention slow, to navigate. And in the middle of the game, you need to embark on an escort mission to bring Dr. Rosenberg to the lab, and you all know why escort missions suck. Most of the time, you aren't even allowed to hurt or kill non-hostile NPCs, which makes sense for Rosenberg because you need him to unlock doors, but otherwise it feels like an unnecessary restriction on the player. Barney can't use the HEV chargers. Instead, he needs to pick up new security guard vests or helmets to increase his armor, which makes the game too easy. Picking up both a new vest and helmet brings your armor to 100%, and while armor is more rare this time around, if you play well enough, you shouldn't lose that much health. Even as an avid Half-Life player, I find it hard to enjoy playing through Blue Shift because the game design feels more uninspired and irritating this time around. Which is especially confusing since this came after Gearbox created Opposing Force, a fantastic expansion that built on the Half-Life gameplay. Blue Shift doesn't bring anything exciting to the table, and aesthetically it doesn't do much to differentiate itself from the original game. The areas you visit are less destroyed than those in Half-Life, and Barney's lower security clearance means he can't access the high-end areas of the facility. So you'll travel through offices, a shipping yard, and maintenance areas, some of which look unique, but others just blend together with the Half-Life levels. There's no new music in Blue Shift, instead it reuses either the Half-Life or Opposing Force soundtrack depending on the version, which makes it hard for the game's events to stick out. The only actual new content is the High Definition pack, which upgraded the models with higher polygon counts, making them look smoother than the base game. These upgrades were certainly a welcome addition when the game was released, but in my opinion, the HD pack actually looks worse. If we're just talking visual fidelity, then obviously the HD pack is better, but the HD pack also changes the styles of the models, and not in a good way. I can understand wanting to update the weapon models, but the pistol and machine gun were entirely redesigned for seemingly no reason. What's the point of switching the MP5 to an M4A1 complete with new sound effects? It just doesn't sit right with me. The worst change in my opinion is the shotgun reload sound, which just sounds way too buffed up compared to the original. I'm willing to admit that I might be biased since I've played the original Half-Life so many times, but that's not the only problem. While the NPC, enemy, and weapon models were changed, all the other models, as well as the textures, were untouched, leading to a weird mishmash of high-def and low-def visuals. That may be fine to some of you, but I honestly prefer the old models for the visual consistency, and I only turned the HD models on for this video just to show them off. I get that Valve and Gearbox wanted to update Half-Life's visuals, because they are dated. I just don't think the HD pack is a good substitution. But after all my complaining, Blue Shift is not a bad game, it just pales in comparison to both Half-Life and Opposing Force. It doesn't do anything new beyond questionably better graphics, and while the base gameplay is still excellent, the design isn't up to snuff. If you view it as its own game, then it's a solid shooter that's over before you know it, but comparing it to its predecessors and successors, the game falls apart. In retrospect, the only real contribution Blue Shift made to the series is the character of Barney, who became a much bigger deal in Half-Life 2, so I guess I can respect Blue Shift for that. I can really only recommend Blue Shift if you've already played Half-Life and Opposing Force, not because it's a good follow-up, but just so that you can complete the Half-Life trilogy. We're almost done with the original Half-Life expansions, but we have one last stop on the Gold Source engine before we move on, the co-op multiplayer campaign Half-Life Decay. But for that, I'm gonna need some help.